Hello and welcome to Your Employment Matters. I'm Beverly Williams and I'm here to help you navigate your career. This is for anyone who's searching for their dream job or promotion, or perhaps you're just looking to hang on to the job you have. Today's work environments are multi-generational, multi-religious, multinational, multiracial, and multi-gender identity. Add market disruptors like Amazon and Lyft, along with the addition of AI, and it's easy to see why finding and keeping a job is such a challenge. Employment success and even employment survival depend on your ability to adapt. That's why my goal for this 30-minute podcast is to first advocate embracing change and differences, and second, to encourage you to proactively assume responsibility for your career. Get your work week off to a good start by listening to Your Employment Matters every Monday. Find out how to own your career and get the best practices for making your employment matter. Hello, and welcome to Your Employment Matters. It's Beverly Williams, and I'm back with a very special guest. Now, lest you think that I don't follow my advice, which sometimes I don't because I don't think of it, but I am not typically one who talks to strangers. But because of the podcast, because of the books I write, because of what my passion is, I find that I'm doing more networking than I have ever done before. And my guest today was someone I met at a networking event. So it was such a pleasant encounter. And after I found out what she did for a living, I said, there aren't that many of them walking around. And perhaps there's someone out there who may be interested in this or some other aspect of what she's doing and may take away a nugget. Today's guest is Seth Kellogg. Now, you may think that Seth is an unusual name for a woman, but that's her name. That's the name she was born with. And when you hear from her, you will know just how talented she is. Now, so I cover everything that Seth has accomplished. I'm going to read from her bio. Seth is an interesting individual, as I stated. She's been described as a leader in evaluating and managing sites impacted by per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS. Seth is a senior principal geologist with more than 30 years of experience in environmental consulting. Broadly stated, her job is to find and clean up environmental contamination. But mostly what she does is she helps her clients understand and manage their environmental liabilities. Now, just a few of her accomplishments. She is the president-elect of the National Groundwater Association, NGWA. She assumes office in December of this year. Now, significantly, Seth is the first woman elected president of that organization in its 75-year history. She has professional geology licenses in Pennsylvania and New York, and she's published several articles and presented at over 24 technical meetings. Now, a few personal tidbits. Seth has a pathological, this is her words, not mine. She has a pathological need for fairness. Well, if you're going to be pathological, I guess pathological about fairness is a good thing. And she believes that everyone brings unique skills, knowledge, and perspectives. I agree with that, absolutely. Seth believes that better solutions are created when leaders are able to identify and integrate all the strengths of each member of a team. I agree with that. It's helpful. Seth believes that the universe puts you where you need to be when you need to be there. I agree with that too. We have a lot in common. She's curious, she loves to learn new things, and she loves to travel. Now, this is the part I think she's being modest about. She describes herself as an introvert. She says that interacting in large groups takes a lot of energy, and it's a skill that she needs to practice to be any good at. The people who elected her to the office of her professional organization must have thought that she would be an asset. And she didn't strike me as an introvert, but that's just me. Seth has been married for 22 years, and she has a 20-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter. Her husband is a geriatric social worker, and he and his RN partner own and run an elder care navigation company. Now, I'm going to let Seth explain her husband's line of work so I don't mangle it. But I think that it's information that you might want to have, you might want to make note of for yourself or a family member or a loved one, someone that you know may be able to use the information and access Seth's husband's services. So without further ado, I want to welcome Seth Kellogg to Your Employment Matters. Thank you for taking the time. I so appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, Beverly.
So now we've chatted about you being a geologist, and although I may have made light of it, it is not a typical job for a female. Just isn't. I mean, I wasn't born yesterday, so I've lived a long time. And you're the first geologist that I've met. So how did you prepare for this job? Did you know as a teenager maybe that this was the career you wanted to pursue? And how did you go about doing it?
So, no, I didn't know when I was a teenager I wanted to be a geologist. I started thinking I wanted to be an environmental lawyer. And I went off to college and I was getting an undergraduate degree in environmental studies. And I took an internship at a consulting firm in Washington, D.C., and realized that the people with geology degrees got paid more than everybody else. So
That'll do it.
exactly. So when I went back to school, I looked at my classes and I realized I could pick up a geology as a double major and did that my junior and senior year of college. And what I love about geology is it's the indecisive science, in that if you can't pick between biology or chemistry or physics, geology involves all of them. And it's a very process driven science where you can see things happening in real time. And so I find it absolutely fascinating. And I've loved all the work that I've gotten to do.
Now, did anyone encourage you to pursue this? Or when they say, oh, you don't want to do this, you be a lawyer. Did anyone try to influence your decision as you move forward?
So my mother felt very strongly that I should be a teacher or a nurse or something that I could be flexible and support my husband in. And I didn't have interest or passion for either one of those professions. So I will say I've had some wonderful mentors, and throughout my career, I've been encouraged to be curious. I've been encouraged to ask questions. I've been encouraged to sort of push the envelope of the science that we're doing, because in the environmental field and in geology in particular, in a lot of cases, you find data that doesn't make sense. It doesn't line up with any other site that you've ever seen. It doesn't line up with what's in the literature, what they taught you in college. And you really have to go back and untangle those pieces and figure out what's happening, where the contamination went in, where it is going to, who is it actually impacting, what are the things that are influencing how it moves from one place to another. And so I have had some brilliant mentors who, again, have encouraged me to ask those questions and not go for the simple answers. And that's how I got involved with the National Groundwater Association. Is I had a great mentor who said, these are people that like to ask these questions, and it's a great industry to be part of, and we want you to get involved and be able to interact with other people that are also asking these questions and trying to get to the best answers. So
No, and that's very important. Professional affiliations are important. And I joined bar associations, legal professional organizations, but I wasn't active because, as I said, I didn't want to talk to strangers. I just wanted to join and maybe attend a CLE every once in a while, a continuing legal education seminar, but I didn't join any of the local bar associations. I wasn't active, and I miss that. I'm more active now, but I'm winding down. But I've met people and I've had mentors in the last few years that have been very, very supportive of whatever I've wanted to do, especially writing. I published articles in professional organizational publications that I would never, and I didn't as a younger attorney. I didn't because I didn't know these people. And there's always someone who's willing to let you do something because everybody is not volunteering.
well, I absolutely. And I think it comes down to just being willing to say yes. Depending on where you are in your career, you may or may not think that you're qualified for what they're asking you to do. But being willing to say yes, being willing to take that chance, being willing to be part of a committee or run for an office. And I guess the other thing I will say about the National Groundwater Association is it's a very interesting organization in that it isn't just scientists and engineers. It involves contractors or water well drillers, as well as people that make drill rigs and manufacture piping and screens and pumps, and the people that sell it. So there are those four sections. And for scientists and engineers, a lot of the times we go to conferences, we want to sit and learn and not really interact with people. We're not incredibly social, but when you're put into a situation where you're with a larger group of people and you're with groundwater professionals who their livelihood really depends on their social interactions, it brings a whole nother dimension and makes it really fun and interactive. And NGWA has always had this focus on being better together. And I think that that's, as an industry, as a groundwater industry, as groundwater professionals, that NGWA really brings all of the pieces together and encourages everyone to interact in a way that I'm not sure some of the niche organizations would as effectively.
And the other thing is that relationships are important. And the other thing that's important is don't be afraid to ask questions. Sometimes people are reluctant. I'm not. It's like, I don't understand. What is it? Can you explain that to me? But I'm confident enough and old enough to know what I know and know what I don't know. And I'm interested in wanting to learn more. I want to learn more about a lot of things. And if there's something that I don't know, why not ask? Especially young people may not be as ready and willing to ask questions because sometimes people think, oh, well, they'll think I'm stupid. I don't care because if it's an area I don't know anything about, I am stupid about that. I don't know. So I need more information. If you could just tell me, could you explain it to me? That's the way you learn. That's the way, really, the way you curry favor, too. Because if you're confident enough to admit your deficiency in your learning, that speaks volumes about you as a person. And that can make a difference in how people view you, I think.
I agree. And I feel like one of the tricks that I learned when I was younger is because you're right, it is really hard to speak up in a meeting and be afraid of looking like you don't know when you feel like you should. So taking the time afterwards and going and saying, I didn't really want to take the time in this meeting or waste everybody else's time, but can you explain this to me?
Yes,
Usually
that's a good idea.
starts a really good conversation. And half the time, whoever I'm talking to is like, oh, I didn't really think about it that way. Or maybe we should approach this in a different way. And as a manager, I've sort of flipped that. And if I have a meeting where I feel like people are too quiet or they're not asking questions where I feel like they should, I will go and talk to them each individually afterwards and make sure that everybody has a good understanding of what the goals are, what the plan is. Do they need any additional resources? Because I feel like the meetings that make me the most nervous are the ones where everyone sits and nods their head and you walk out and you're like, no one has any idea what they're doing.
Well, that's a good leadership tip for leaders or people who don't have a lot of experience as leaders, may just be starting out. That's a good idea. If everybody's quiet, then you need to go around and talk to people at the end of the session so that you make sure that they know, first of all, that you're willing to talk to them and that you want to talk to them and they can ask whatever questions they want. And that way you can establish a relationship with them if that's something that's in the offing. But one of the things that I've learned about and I've written an article about is collaboration. And that fosters collaboration as you enlarge your group, the people that you interact with. And as I said in your introduction, you don't strike me as being an introvert. But if you say you are, you are. You know better than I. But you're very approachable. And that's very helpful. I haven't always been approachable, I have to admit.
So I like to listen. I love to hear people's stories and get an idea of where they're coming from and what their expertise are and what they're passionate about. And I think as an introvert, that almost sort of insulates you because as an extrovert, you sort of feel like you need to entertain people. And that's not, I always feel like I am the most boring person in the room. And there, my life is not like fabulous and fancy. And like it just, I, I am very, I like what I like. I'm focused. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm good with that. I don't need drama. I don't, but it really makes me feel like I don't really have a lot of things to talk about with people because not everybody cares about PFAS, right? Not everybody wants to know about the latest rocks and stuff that I've gotten to look at. So by listening to people and hearing what they're excited about and what they're passionate about and what they're curious about, it allows me to put those pieces together and help connect and solve problems in a unique way. Like I think this person has something that's really going to help us answer these questions. And I've always felt like that's sort of my superpower, right? Is that I listen and I remember and I can put the pieces together when I have that problem in front of me.
I think I can see that about you. As I said, you're approachable. I think that could be said, though, of everybody that was at our table at that networking event. We were talking up a storm,
Oh, absolutely.
but we were comfortable. It was a comfortable environment. I know as a young attorney, I was always afraid to raise my hand or ask a question because I wasn't sure it was going to come out of my mouth in an intelligent way. I remember writing down what I wanted to say so that I could not read it, but if I wrote it down, it would stick in my mind. Because no one wants to sound or look stupid. You know what I mean? It's like no matter where you are in your career, there may be hesitancy, that hesitance to step out there, especially around people you're not familiar with. And I've outgrown it, but every once in a while it creeps back in because I don't know these people. They don't know me. Maybe they won't like me. I've never been concerned about that aspect of it, but I want to impart information, useful information that's helpful. And if I don't do that, I failed. And that makes me feel some kind of way. So that's my passion now because there's so much employment anxiety in the country now that if I can do anything to diminish it, I'm going to try. And with people like you sharing your journey, how did you decide where you would start working? How did you apply for jobs?
So I will answer that question, but I want to comment on what you were just saying as well. So, what I loved about meeting you at that networking event was how authentically excited you were about connecting with people and how passionate you were about helping everyone. And I think that that is an incredibly attractive and warm energy to have. So, I loved sitting at that table. It was a great discussion. And from a network,
Well, now one of the women, Maria, and I went to law school together. So we're we're used to each other.
well, you were both
Well,
incredibly
thank you so
welcoming.
much. That's very nice of you to say.
But I will say, so building, so when I started thinking about how am I going to build my network, again, knowing that I don't love walking into rooms like that, the two things that I have that I keep telling myself is one, everyone that goes to a networking event knows that they're at a networking event. So you just need to understand that everyone there knows that they're going to try to meet somebody. The other thing that I try to do was set reasonable and attainable goals for myself. So I would always say, I'm going to meet three people that I didn't know, and I'm going to have a conversation so that I know who they are and what they're about. And you do that enough times, and you meet three people and three people and three people, and they start talking, connecting you to. So 20 years later, you have a network, and you have this group of people that are supporting you because you've supported them throughout their careers. The way that I picked, I sort of backed into my first jobs. So the university I went to had alumni down in Washington, D.C., and they invited a group of students to come down. And the guy that was the vice president loved having interns. The first year that I was an intern, there were 90 people in the office and there were 12 interns. There were so many of us. They put us in a conference room and they referred to it as the romper room. Like it was a lot of fun. But the way that I got that job was because I called every 2 weeks. And when I asked them, like, they hired me, I said, "Why'd you hire me?" They're like, "You were persistent. We knew that you wanted it. We knew that you were hungry." And so, again, understanding what it is that you want and the group of people that you want to be engaged with, and being persistent about seeking out those kind of opportunities.
It's interesting that you say that. The first chapter of my book is plan, persist, persevere. You've got to keep it up. You've got to follow up. My follow up skills, they're excellent, but they haven't been excellent lately because I haven't had time. But I will follow up. You run a fine line, and anyone listening to this, you need to keep in mind that you don't want to get on people's nerves. You don't call every day, but call maybe every week, every 2 weeks. Play it by ear, but you don't want to be considered a pest. But to Seth's point, that you want to let them know that you're interested and you want to be persistent. That's critical. Absolutely critical.
And I don't know what kind of advice you give to this generation just starting out, because I think we didn't have cell phones when I first started. We literally put paper resumes in the mail and mailed them to people. And I feel like you are so much more in touch with social media and email and websites, but so much less personal. And so finding that connection and finding that person to be persistent with is much more of a challenge for folks that are looking for a career these days.
I was watching a career show on PBS, and one of the managers who was interviewing candidates for a job, she said, and this was the first time I'd ever heard it. She said, if I don't get a thank you in some form the day after I've interviewed them, I just throw their resume away. And I never heard that. But you should express your gratitude for their time.
Absolutely.
Let them know that you appreciate the time that they took to talk to you, to read your email. But the other thing I do is I send thank you notes, e-cards, or I'll send a handwritten, depending on what it is. If it's really serious and I want to make an impression, I send a handwritten note snail mail because nobody else is doing that.
Absolutely.
And that's what I tell my young friends. Oh no, differentiating yourself is not enough. You have to distinguish yourself. You have to set yourself above everyone else. And you can do that by sending a letter or a card, snail mail. No one else is doing that. Everybody else is sending stuff electronically. No. And it should be nice. It should be no mistakes in the writing. Take your time, copy it on a piece of paper before you copy it onto the card, and thank them for their time and keep in touch. With your permission, I'll keep in touch with you in case something comes up. You've got to think of it this way. You want to create a win-win. People looking for jobs, they're concerned about finding a job for themselves, Seth. They need a job. They're not thinking about the employer and what the employer needs. But if you can create a win-win and they can see that you're persistent, you're polite, you're well-spoken, you don't look like you fell off a turnip truck, you came in appropriately dressed, just keep bringing them, keep texting them, calling them, emailing them, and sending them snail mails. They'll get tired of it. They'll want to talk to you.
Absolutely.
They will definitely want to talk to you. What advice do you have for our listeners and those who may find themselves unemployed either for the first time in a long employment journey or those just graduating from high school or college? And they'll be looking for a job, if not now, probably in May or June.
So I would say folks that are unemployed in the middle of a career, try to take advantage of that time to think about really what it is you want to do next. What do you want that career to look like? And what direction do you want to go? I was unemployed for 3 months about 10 years ago. And it was not a position I expected to find myself in, but it was the first time in 20 years that I had really thought about what am I good at? And what do I bring? What do I want to bring to the next opportunity? And what do I want to do, frankly, for the next phase of my career? And I stayed in environmental consulting, but it took me in a different direction because I realized that my technical skills, while I'm very good at what I do technically, what I really like is business development and engaging with clients and learning about their problems and creating solutions and building teams. So it had me look at different types of companies, it had me look at different types of positions. And it also took me back to a place where I had to hustle again because my resume didn't necessarily reflect the positions that I was going for. I had to be persistent. I had to be willing to talk to people and make those connections and show that I could do the job that I wanted now.
How did you get your foot in the door? If it didn't look from your on your looking at your resume, it didn't say, "Oh, well, this is a good fit," because fit is everything these
Right.
days. How were you able? Must have been through contacts, people who knew you, maybe have recommended that they talk to you. you might see something that is not reflected on the resume?
So it certainly is through contacts. I guess in the environmental industry, there are sort of three legs or three pieces. There's technical work that is essentially what you bill the client for. So that's how you make money. There's management, which is making sure that the projects run smoothly, that schedules are met and all those things. And that also can make money. And then there's business development, which costs money. And
But it brings in money.
exactly. But usually, when you want a position in business development, it requires that you show that you are capable of developing business. Most people aren't going to hire you on the thought that maybe you'd be good at that. So I had to, I guess, spin some of my technical work and some of my program management, project management work to look more like business development, which in a lot of cases it can be, and demonstrate that I understood the skills that it took, that I had the contacts, that I had the ability and the need and the desire to go out and make and build those relationships and do that kind of work. But it certainly it wasn't necessarily an easy transition. The job that I ended up getting, I literally took everyone that interviewed me out to lunch separately after the interview. And I think that's how I ended up demonstrating that I could build these relationships, that I could do business development, that I would be a good fit. But I mean, it was a 6-week process by the time I'd gotten the interview. I'd done all of the follow up that I wanted to do. I'd sent my thank yous. And but it really took me showing them that I wanted that position and it was something that I was capable of doing.
But you also distinguished yourself. I bet you none of the other applicants took everybody out, each person out to lunch.
That I can't vouch for that, but I doubt they did. Yeah.
No, they didn't. It would never have occurred to them. I can't imagine. They might have taken one person out, not everyone who interviewed them, because they would probably take the decision maker out, not the other people, because they're not as important. And that's what they think. But you don't know who's important. You really don't. When you're being interviewed, I mean, the custodian can be the owner's grandfather, and he's just there because he wants to be. That's why I always advocate you treat people the way you want to be treated, because it doesn't matter whether they work in the cafeteria, whether they work in maintenance as a custodian. Those are the people that know where the bodies are buried and know who you need to talk to. And if they like you and if you're nice to them and they think you're a decent person, they will watch your back. They will tell you things that they won't tell other people. And it can make a difference in your ability to move forward.
Oh, absolutely.
But everybody doesn't think that way. Well, our time is just about up. I've so enjoyed this.
I was going to
I
say, it's
really
been
have.
lovely.
We'll have to get together again and have a few chats. Maybe we can go to lunch.
I would love
Since we're
that.
close,
Yes.
we can go to lunch. But I really appreciate your candor and your willingness to talk about how you have moved along, because that's very helpful. It's very helpful. I think sometimes people think that they have to make demands. That's not the way it works usually. You have to show them what you're capable of or tell them what you're capable of and then demonstrate it. And that's what you do. That's what you did. That's what you do. And that's why you've been as successful as you are. And God knows I have no scientific talents. That's why I'm a lawyer. But it's interesting to hear the similarities. It's all about relationships and interacting with people, because people are the decision makers. Unless they give it to AI, people are going to be making decisions about who gets hired. And that's why we have to step up and improve and enhance our interpersonal skills, because I think they're lacking to a degree. We have to do better.
I think it's definitely something that everyone has to work on. I mean, again, I know that it's something I practice because I'm not naturally good at walking up to someone and introducing myself and asking what they do. It's something that I make sure that my children can do. My husband is a stickler. Like, you have to have a good handshake. And we, again, it's something that you practice. It's something I would love to see. This is a total aside, but my daughter at one point was interviewing at private schools and didn't actually end up taking a position. But one of the things that the private schools do is they had a dinner every Tuesday night where they would bring in people from the community, they'd bring in alumni, and the students had to sit around a dinner table and interact with people that they didn't know. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. That was a skill set that you have to know how to make conversation. And being able to learn that in high school was such an incredible advantage. So, yeah.
You're right. One of the children that I'm close to, she's working in Boston now, but she was in a private school, a very big deal private school, and she asked me to come and speak to the younger students, like the freshmen, because I think at the time she was a senior. And this young lady, you could tell that she was not outgoing. She was like very timid looking, like she was holding back. But when she stepped to me, she extended her hand firmly and shook my hand firmly. I said, "Oh, they're training these people here." Because I'm telling you, she looked like deer in the headlights. It was like, I don't know, I don't want to talk to anybody. But as soon as they introduced her to me, she stepped up, extended her hand, and gave me a firm handshake. And I said, "This is worth the price of admission." It
Absolutely.
really is.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I want to do. Their books, I don't know, we have time, but I'm going to tell you this story. I have a friend who has two sons, and one son, the older son, has always been close to me. Whenever she bring him to work, he would come and stay with me. The younger one didn't have any time for me, didn't have any use for me. And after 10 years, he warmed up to me, okay? So I gave them a book called What a Gentleman Does. I think it was either What a Gentleman Does or What a Gentleman Says. He didn't say anything, but then he got a girlfriend. He was about 14 and he got a girlfriend, and the family invited him to dinner. Honey, he busted open that book so he could see what he should do. He took flowers for the mother. Oh, I said, when his mother told me, I said, "See," I said, you really should pay me. You really should pay me." But it's just those small things that, well, I guess they're not so small, but things that people don't really think of.
Mhm.
But those books are important. They should be in every school, because everyone doesn't have your husband telling them a firm handshake. Everyone's situation is not the same. So that's another thing, that those books are invaluable. And I list them in my book. These are books that you may want to put them in, ask your library to buy them so that you can read them, because it expands who you are as a person, and it will make you feel more comfortable if you're in unfamiliar social situations.
Yep, absolutely. We have neighbors that have 5 boys, and their rule was that they had to date their grandmother 3 times before they were allowed to take anybody their own age out. So,
Wow.
which I thought was wonderful. So they had to pick her up in the car and open the door and take her out, and
Love it.
which was wonderful because grandma got to hang out with the boys, and it was also wonderful because they got a chance to learn how they were supposed to behave.
Exactly. And that didn't cost anything. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's what I try to, it doesn't, even if you think it doesn't, whatever it is, doesn't cost much. Some people can't afford it, doesn't cost much. So if they're listening to us, they're picking up new things that they can do to enhance their social interaction. So I feel as though we've done good today. And thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Well, again, Beverly,
And
thank you so much. This was wonderful.
I love it. I love it. So, listeners, until next time, this is Beverly Williams. If you're so inclined, please consider buying my book, Your GPS to Employment Success: How to Find and Succeed in the Right Job. And please listen to Your Employment Matters, the podcast, because they're nuggets that you can use and it doesn't cost you a dime. So until next time, thanks for listening. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Your Employment Matters with Beverly Williams. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. I truly appreciate your support, and that helps other listeners find the podcast. If you have a comment, question, or suggestion, you can reach me at baWilliams@youremploymentmatters.com. My book, Get the Job Done, is available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. Please join me again next week. Until then, remember to embrace change and differences.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.